We can at least go to this. Okay, continue. So this is the calendar events for the upcoming events. Obviously, James is with us right now, so I did not put that on the slide. But in 2 weeks, I think it is, we have Interface, which thankfully is online. So we can all join it well. We will be staffing a booth, a quote virtual booth, so that you can stop by. So that's going on in July. In August, we've got the FBI field trip, which is our big thing for the year. Everybody really likes that. I will tell you, we have it set from 1 to 2. Sometimes some members decide to go and have a little chat afterwards, or go to a restaurant, and that's fine too. Because when we do this, we kind of combine our general membership meeting with this, because it's a lot to intake in 1 month. So we have this going. As far as the masks and the virus goes, everybody at the FBI office has had their vaccines. If you've had your vaccines, you don't have to wear a mask. If you haven't, you need to wear a mask, or if you are just hesitant for whatever reason, you can still wear a mask. But just so you understand what's going on, we do have a form that needs to be filled out, and we will be sending the information on how to do that later, because there is some PII. They do need to do a slight background check on everybody that wants to join the tour. So just a heads up on that. We will be sending information out later. September, we're still, well, if you're going to notice, September, November, December, we're still looking for speakers. So if anybody does want to speak and have the opportunity, please let me know, and we can get you all lined up. We just ask it's security related, not vendor based, or not politically based. That's all we ask. And other than that, you're free to pick the topic you want. October, we do have a speaker already set, and it's about differential privacy, which we're really interested in hearing about. To see what that's about, it's Rob Slade, and he is from another ISC squared chapter. And so we are really branching out and reaching out to other chapters to get speakers to invite external knowledge from other chapters. I mean, this is what we're here for. So back to, if you want to speak September, November, December, let me know, and we will go from there. As far as Interface New Mexico, the link is at the bottom of the page, and this the PowerPoint right here will be posted on our Discord channel, so you can click on all the links, the social media links from the page before. Let me see if can I get to that? How did I do that? So from the page we were previously on, this one, all the social media links, you'll be able to get to that on the Discord server, and you'll be able to get to all of this. And as we get speakers lined up and events lined up, we'll be adding more to our calendar. I said, we're excited about Interface. We're excited about the field trip because everybody really likes that one. And we're trying to get speakers for slots for the rest of the year. And the last thing is for CPEs, we're really trying to be able to facilitate that for everybody that attends this, because you do get credit. So what we're going to do for right now, because, well, COVID and everything being the way it is, and we're not meeting in person. So as before, I don't know how many of you remember, signing that sheet. I was here, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, we can't do that right now. So what we're asking is that you send an email to the email that's on the list, that's on the page right now, with the email that you have on file with ISC squared. Send us an email from that account and give us your name and the certification number, and we can submit the CPEs for you. And so we're still trying to figure out how to negotiate all this, and this is a solution we have, at least for today's presentation. So go ahead and send your info to that, and we can get you the CPEs, and that will show up when ISC Corporate gets around to posting them. So at this point, the 3 slides that I just showed you will be on the Discord server, but I am more than happy to turn this over to James, because we were so excited that when James responded to our call for speakers, as far as, we've kind of kept it local lately, and this is our first nationwide, what I consider nationwide speaker. He has experience up and down the board. He's been in cybersecurity for over 20 years. He is now currently a security awareness advocate for KnowBe4. And if any of you are a YouTube junkie like I am, if you've ever seen Host Unknown and you've seen those CISSP videos, you know what I'm talking about. And but before he joined KnowBe4, he was a product and solution security officer, information security analyst, and a network security engineer. He's also a part-time professor at Valencia College in engineering, computer, and programming technology division. I mean, so we have a real heavy hitter right here. This is, yeah, we are so excited about this. And he is also the president of the Central Florida chapter and a member of the trustee board for the Center for Cyber Safety and Education. So we are more than excited to have James with us. And with that lead in, I will hand this over to James. Go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, James, so you can go ahead and take over at that point. And cool. Again, welcome to James, and I hope everybody really enjoys this presentation. And thank you again to James for agreeing to do this today. Thank you.
Tatra, the pleasure is all mine. I'm real excited. I've been let me bring up this next slide here. I'm not reading all this. I'm just going to put this up just for a sec. I actually have 2 introductory slides, and I only did 2 because of the fact that I'm speaking to another ISC Squared chapter. I've been a member of ISC Squared since 2008 when I got my CISSP. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I had to take it twice to pass it. And once I passed it, I said, that's it. I am making sure I never have to take that exam again. And pretty well looked for every opportunity that I could to get involved, to earn my CPEs every year. I think we had an ISSA chapter here in Central Florida, but the ISC Squared ones didn't really kick off till about 2011. And I learned about those at ISC Squared Security Congress when it was here in Orlando for the first time back in 2011. Got to meet Jada, who runs the chapter programs, and all the folks at ISC Squared. And over the years, have just had a great relationship working with them. It is an it's a nice perk of the fact that I'm here in Orlando, Florida, and they're down in Tampa. So, which is right next to where my office is for KnowBe4. I do work remotely for KnowBe4, doing presentations and everything else, advocating essentially for cybersecurity. But right now, I have been for the last 4 years, the ISC Squared Central Florida chapter president. Prior to that, I ran the ISSA chapter for about 3.5 years. So being involved in volunteer organizations is challenging. It's extremely rewarding. And one of the things, once I got really involved with the chapters, was a way to be able to go visit the chapters. And, you know, every time I'd go to a particular city, they weren't having a meeting. And it's like, But with the virtual for the last year, I've taken the opportunity to attend a bunch of the different meetings around the US as well as overseas. Attended one in London, trying to get into one in Germany, but I think they might speak German, so I might just ignore that one. But I've done tons and tons of stuff with ISC Squared, really do enjoy it. As Tatra said, chapter president, professor, security awareness advocate, worked at Siemens, and I work with the Center for Cyber Safety and Education, which is the foundation group with ISC Squared, and it's all about educating the children, and just a lot of great fun with that. So real quick, KnowBe4, if you haven't heard of us, we are the world's largest integrated security awareness training and phishing assessment platform. We're based out of Clearwater, been around about 10 years. And yeah, there's the marketing slide for you. Okay, so let's start talking about supply chain, because I know that's why you're all here. You didn't want to come here and come to hear me talk about myself with regards to that much. But so in a recent Gartner review, because you know, Gartner is Gartner, they came up with the top 5 supply chain technology trends back in 2020. And number 4 was recognizing the global risk events are on the rise, security breaches impacts the companies on digital and the physical levels. So Basically, they're recognizing that, yeah, we're getting a lot more of these attacks. They're happening, and we got to have, a lot more awareness and preparation for it. Essentially, we're at war when it comes to all these cyber attacks, the cyber criminals, nation states, and everything else. We're essentially at a cyber war, and this is kind of what our daily lives feel like sometimes. Instead of the M16 or M4 or 6 or whatever gun that is they use. I apologize that I didn't serve. For those of you that did, thank you. But I didn't really serve. But, I do imagine if we were at a cyber war, it'd be our keyboards and our mouse and our mice as our weapons. So when it comes to your supply chain, your organization's cybersecurity program is only as strong as the weakest supply chain organization, third party that you are working with. And that's kind of the mentality, because if that supply chain or that third party that you're working with that provide either a product or a service for the operation of your organization, if they don't have a strong security posture and you're allowing them remote access into your network, then it goes to say that your security posture won't be as strong because of their weakness. So I've been talking about supply chain security off and on pretty well for the last 4 or 5 years. And up until about the end of December, end of 2020, I would talk, when it came to supply chain attacks, I talked about Target and Home Depot and the Office of Personnel Management, MeDoc because of Petya. Lenovo had a supply chain issue, so did CC Cleaner. Then we had SolarWinds, and SolarWinds is just changing everything for us. But that was all before 2020, the end of 2020. Since then, we've had the Acilian FTP issue, we've had the Exchange issue, we had JBS, we had the Colonial Pipeline, we had MTA, and we had EA Games, all impacted us in a supply chain type manner. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, Colonial Pipeline, they had the oil, okay, raised up the gas prices. All right, I got the MTA, the folks in New York had a tough time getting to work on the subway. JBS, I couldn't get my stakes. The Exchange issue, okay, email, the Acilion, the FTP server, okay, I get that. EA Games, they're a supply chain to us for our happiness, for those endorphin rushes that we get when we're playing the games on our Xboxes or on our PlayStations or on our PC if we're gamers, which I think I saw a Discord channel in here that said gaming. So I was like, all right, good, we've got some gamers. But that was a supply chain interruption to the endorphins in our brain to bring us joy and happiness. So when we look at the 5 risks for a supply chain, the cyber attacks, either to you or to your supply chain third party, lack of security awareness, minimal incident response, they're reacting at the time, they're not proactive, and so forth. Vendor management, third party management programs aren't in place, and a resilience deficiency. Those are the 5 risks. And I think the title of the presentation was Come Learn About the 5 Risks. So those are the 5 risks. So I want to thank you all for coming to my TED Talk. I had a great time being here today. I'm only kidding. I've got like another 80 slides left to go yet. And I think I got an hour and a half. So no, I'm only kidding. But we are going to go through and look at those 5 different risks. But before we do that, I just realized I can't see the cameras. Oh, there's the participants. Oh, I know why. Usually I can bring up the cameras and I can, if people have their sharing, but I think no, I can't see everybody. Oh well, never mind. You can chat in the Discord. I've got the Discord channel up here. I've got the chat window up here. So if there's comments or questions you want to drop in as I go along, and you don't want to interrupt, you can drop the questions in Discord, in the general, or in the chat for Zoom, and I will see it and I will work that into the presentation. If not, I'll recognize it and I will answer it at the end. I like to keep it dynamic just so I'm not running through the same thing over and over again. Okay, so here we go. So anybody want to guess why Superman doesn't fight cybercrime? Yeah, he's afraid of
tights are too tight.
No, he's afraid of cryptocurrency. So,
oh, that's even better.
So somebody said I had a sense of humor. I didn't say it was good, but I can't confirm or deny that there will be any more dad jokes as we go along here tonight. So you've got your warning. This is, and at the end of the presentation, I'll tell you why why I have slide jokes every other slide, or dad jokes every other slide. All right. So what I'm going to go through, we're going to talk about the attack vectors. And I think a lot of us already in the security industry, we're already familiar with them, but I'm just going to run through them because one of the things that I do as a college professor is I have to gauge where my students are in their understanding with regards to cybersecurity, IT, and so forth. So basically the attack vectors is just to kind of baseline us. So we're all on the same level. I'm going to go through it quite quickly, but if you got questions, drop them in the chat or Discord channel. So let's talk about attack vectors. Insider threats is what we're going to kick off with. Some inside threats are real obvious. Others, not so much. And so that essentially the trick is identifying them before the damage actually gets done. If anybody recognizes this is from Spaceballs. You know, the spoof off Alien in the particular scene. The guy pops out and does his, oh, hello, my baby, hello, my whatever it is. I don't sing, and I would scare you all away if I really kept on singing. So, but the idea here with insider threats is being able to recognize them and identify them. So when we look at insider threats, one particular category, or the first category, is negligence, employee mistakes. When I was building this slide deck a couple months ago, and I needed something for negligence, I wanted a graphic that would just, for computer folks, would just send a shiver down your spine. And when I did negligence in computer under images in a stock photography site that I use, I got this. And I'm like, yep, this is pretty well the perfect explanation and response to negligence, because the amount of times I would go over to a friend's house, because I would be the guy they would call to come fix their computer, and they would tell me that it's running slow, and I would get over there and I pull the computer out, and there it's just full of dust bunnies. Yeah. So once you clean all that out, it makes life a lot easier. So, but employee mistakes that we've seen in the industry, leaving databases in cloud unsecured. You know, they're working on a project. Hey, I can put it up in our Azure or AWS. They'll lock it down. Well, they don't lock it down well enough. Failing to report a compliance issue. They see something but don't say something. Weak passwords, poor management of accounts. We're familiar with those. Unauthorized access for terminated employees. I've heard lots of stories about that. And my favorite, reply to all on emails that don't need a reply to all. I consider that an employee mistake and negligent. Let's talk about malicious intent. So negligence is making the mistakes without really having that understanding. Malicious is, you know, it's wrong. So creating backdoors to software, whether you're doing that for good or for bad, but getting them in there. Corporate espionage, data, IP theft, employees leaving organizations, try to take all the contact information, selling the IP for their own gain. They end up stealing information, specific plans, formulas, whatever it may be. Could be curiosity. You got IT folks or InfoSec folks or people in the organization that goes, hey, look, I just got this great little program. Look what I can do with it. Or there might be blackmailed or extorted. We had the Tesla issue last year where a nation state agent approached somebody that worked at the Tesla factory. Didn't blackmail or extort them, but basically did approach them and asked them to put the thumb drive into one of the computers so they could get the, I guess, battery specs or whatever it is they were stealing. But your malicious intent may come from an unhappy employee, or they might be put in a unfortunate position. Accidental. And usually with accidental, we look at this as social engineered, whether they're phishing, vishing, spear phishing, tailgating, shoulder surfing, business email compromise, or ransomware. Insider threat, carrying that on, now we start looking at software and the third party. I talked already a little bit about the different software supply chains where we saw with Excellion, with SolarWinds and Exchange, but basically they're trying to gain access into the system. And this becomes one of the big issues that we've been seeing already. The third-party supply chain, now we start talking about hardware. And I remember this from a few years ago with regards to Supermicro, the China. We had, I think it was Bloomington or somebody reported that, hey, you know, China's got a microchip, you know, and of course they had the picture saying that they've got these chips on the Supermicro motherboards and they're transmitting data back to China. And it turned out it was all false. It was untrue. However, it is possible. I have a colleague of mine, Monte Elkin, who basically got his hands on a Cisco ASA, and he actually soldered a chip to the board to be able to collect configurations, usernames, keystrokes, and have that sent back to him. Programmed it all, put it into the chip, put the chip on the board, and brought it to DEF CON. And it was pretty impressive. It took him about, he spent a couple of weeks doing all the research, but soldering the chip, opening the case, soldering the chip, closing it back up, less than 20 minutes. Now, yes, there's tamper-proof tape on there, but if you've ever been to DEF CON, they have those tamper-proof competitions where they try to see people try to get into things without making it look like somebody actually got into it. So third-party supply chain hardware-wise. Business email compromise. This is another one of the big attacks that are going on that we're seeing within a lot of industries where they'll actually try to use like a forward or a reply in the subject line, because a lot of the security awareness training that's out there tell you that, hey, it's going to be a new email that's sent to you by the cyber criminal. So they started mixing it up. But essentially, some of the average wire transfers that are going out because of the cyber criminals getting into the email servers, monitoring the traffic, seeing how it all works, sees an invoice comes in, they turn around and send an email in as well that basically they've transposed a couple of the characters, created the domain for it, and generated the email to basically say, hey, look, we just sent you the invoice in. We've had a change in our account information. Forgot to tell you, sorry. Here's the new account information. By the time the actual vendor realizes they haven't been paid because it's been more than 90 days, and they go back to the victim organization. Victim organization goes, we paid you guys. And then when they pull up the information and realize it, the victim organization still got to pay the vendor. A lot of things we see with the different BEC scams, wire transfer, W-2, gift card fraud is a big one as well. Basically trying to convince somebody, social engineer them to go buy gift cards, scratch off the back and read the information back to them over the phone or send it to an email, and then they get the gift card. That's a lot harder for them to trace, or the authorities to be able to trace that, because once you buy it, you as the person that bought it owns it. And if you give the information away, there's not much that can be done to recoup those costs. Ransomware, I know we've all heard about it. It's been lots of it been in the news. We've been seeing the double extortion where they are not only encrypting your data, but stealing it and holding that for ransom. Now they're doing a triple extortion where if you're a healthcare, for example, or they steal information about your customers, your clients, your patients, they then go after them and go, hey, look, we've got this information about you. We're going to release it unless you pay us $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever their fee is. So they're stepping up their game. Today, I read an article that they are now focusing on the VMware ESXi kernels and those systems, so they can launch ransomware on there. Because why take out a bunch of systems through a worm? You could hit one server and take out a whole bunch of virtual machines. They're also doing denial of service attacks against the organization while they're trying to get the funds or during that 3-day window of the ransomware. So they are constantly stepping up their game with that. Just some fun, quick stats, but some of the things when it comes to ransomware, 65% of the organizations lose revenue, 32% lose some C-suite talent, 57% suffered less than $50,000 in remediation. 35% of them paid the ransom between $350K to almost $1.5 million. When you start looking at your supply chain and you have an organization that gets hit with ransomware, that if your information or particular information about you is contained within their environment and is stolen, that now puts you at risk as well. So it's not only just thinking about ransomware for your own organization, but then also for that other organization as well. Quick thing about ransomware. Anybody want to guess how the hackers got away from the FBI? Yep, they ransomware. Told you, didn't say they were getting any better. All right, so there you go. They ran. So that's looking at all the attack vectors. One of the things I want to kind of cover now is the human element. So working at KnowBe4, we're all about security awareness. We're all about training. But the human element is when you look at the way the high percentage of data breaches. So you look at the Verizon data breach report from last year. The number one thing that caused all the data breaches is through social engineering. And social engineering isn't done to the firewall or to the routers. It's done to the people that work in the organization. So I just want to touch upon the human element here real quick with regards to how we get impacted. Why do people fall for these phishing and these social engineering scams? Essentially, and I've always felt that people are a critical layer within the fabric of the security program for the organization. A lot of the time we hear, humans are the weakest link. They're always clicking on them, opening attachments, giving away their credentials, having weak passwords, drives us crazy. True. But if they can be not only educated and we can try to improve the culture, then that can make them a strong asset and be a defender of the organization. Doing that's a different story, but the concept and the idea here is that people can be your strongest asset, not your weakest link. So what I want to do is kind of take a step back and look at why as humans, we fall for these social engineering scams. And so looking at the root of the whole deception, the beginning of all this, it's our brains, because that's where all the decisions get made, right? Our CPU. Our brain's job is to filter, interpret, and present a reality for us, whether it's something we're seeing, hearing, tasting, feeling, smelling, and so forth. But essentially, because the brain likes to take shortcuts, it's constantly thinking, constantly moving, scanning your environment. And what this represents is two modes of thinking, or two systems of thinking. And this concept was created by Daniel Kahneman. And Kahneman is a Nobel Prize winning behavioral economist. And he did the study with regards to why people do like impulse buying. You go into Best Buy and you see they've got the new 20 terabyte hard drive, not that high, but the new 20 terabyte hard drive, and it's on sale for 150 bucks. It's like, ooh, I can back up all my data and this will be great. And you just pick it off the shelf and you go buy it. That's your system one thinking. You're fast thinking. You're continually scanning the environment. It's fast, but it is a bit error prone. It will make mistakes. It's working about 95% of your day is spent doing that fast thinking. Your system two, your slower thinking, that's problem solving. That's where you're using it for specific problem solving, figuring things out. It takes effort. You have to work at it. It's slow, but it's reliable. So if I were to turn around and say, what's 2 + 2? We would say 4. Why? We know it's 4 because we've learned it. We've been educated on it. We did math in elementary school. We learned about it. Now, if I said, what's 8,369 divided by 51? You're not going to be able to give me the answer straight away unless you pick up your phone and already entered in the equation. But you know that we know that we could take out a piece of paper and a pencil and we could calculate that doing long division, whether we like that or not as kids. But we can sit down and do that system two thinking to calculate that. So let me give you an example, system one, system two. So how many people had to reread it? Because I know I did the first time I did it. Whether we're looking at Morpheus from the Matrix and we know his famous line of, what have I told you? And that was our brain reading that, knowing that what order those words should be in. What if I told you? But it's actually what I if told you, because your brain is doing that continuous scanning and it makes the assumption of what it is. Here's a bigger example, kind of show it off a little better. Perception versus reality. The phenomenal power of the human mind, according to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be in the right place, and also the length of the word. So your brain is able to automatically determine what that word is as it's scanning, because if English is your second language and we've comprehended over the years, we're able to read that. And we always thought that spelling was important. That's kind of, I'm able to read through that because I've read it dozens and dozens of times, but you are also able to read as well as you went through that because of that system one thinking. It was able to automatically translate it. Let me build on the system two thinking with what's called the OODA loop. Usually I would throw up a picture of Yoda at this point and go, no, not Yoda loop, the OODA loop. And the OODA loop's a model for decision making, kind of in our system two, but it does work along with our system one thinking. Basically, it's the concept of observe, orient, decide, and act. And you're going to be involved in a situation, because this was created by Colonel John Hopkins of the Air Force. He was a dogfighter pilot in the Korean War, basically improved the whole dogfighting skills for the US pilots across all the different military branches. And basically the idea is he wanted to be able to disrupt this, because as you're flying, you're seeing what's going on all around you. You might be hearing things over the radio. You're trying to look for the other fighter jets. You're orienting yourself based on your experience, based on norms, based on rules, based on whatever. Then you come up with a decision, and then you act upon that decision. Well, essentially, that was kind of that system 2 thinking, that he wanted to see if he could disrupt while dogfighting against the other pilots, basically make them go through observe to act. And when we look at social engineering, social engineers are trying to manipulate you. They're relying on greed, urgency, curiosity, fear. One of those, an emotion that's going to make you react, do an action that you normally wouldn't otherwise do. So when you kind of combine those, the ideal situation for a cyber criminal is to hijack that OODA loop by creating a knee-jerk reaction so that you take the action that they want you to take. And so, when you think about phishing emails, social engineering emails, and we get them in and it says, hey, you just won a $50 gift card, or we're changing the benefits in the company, click on the link to view the new benefits. There's that fear, that's that curiosity, could be a greed thing. So a lot of that all kind of comes together with what the cyber criminals are trying to do. Just so everybody knows, I actually hacked into Forrest Gump's computer a couple of weeks ago because I figured out his password. Yeah, it was 1Forrest1. Yep, there we go. Okay. The stats from previous slide is from which source? Sorry, I'm only just seeing it now. Is it this one?
27.
ThreatPost. ThreatPost.com wrote an article. They have a white paper out about it. You can go in and check it out.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Fine folks at ThreatPost, done a bunch of stuff with them. Okay, so we did all this, Forrest Gump. Yep, 1Forrest1. Okay, so let's talk about some of the strategies now with regards to the supply chain, with regards to our organization. And this kind of is like a general overview as well, but some things to consider when you're working with third parties and your supply chain. The first thing is critical data. Whether you call it gold nuggets, crown jewels, intellectual property, critical data, whatever that is, you need to be able to identify what that is for your particular organization. Because you can't protect something if you don't know what you have to protect, essentially, right? So let's look at a couple examples. So as we look at this next object, what's important to the organization for this one, where they're based out of Atlanta, Georgia, they have their formula for their Coca-Cola. That is something they protect. That's critical to them. If that gets out, that's it. They're out of business. Fried chicken from a particular state here in the US, there are 11 herbs and spices, So these are kind of some easy examples. How about a hospital? I'm not sure if anybody works in healthcare, but I know within the hospital healthcare environment, you're dealing with PHI, PII, you're dealing with your employee information, you've got all the patient information, you've got your databases, you've got the CT machines, MRIs, all the other machines that are running that they need to do surgeries with. So going through and trying to figure out what's critical, what's important, what do we have to protect the most, and how do we protect that as we go along. So we need to determine what's important. A lot of that's going to come down to asset identification, classification levels, and a business impact analysis. So you're going to be doing these studies, and usually this is with your risk management team, InfoSec folks as well, but going through and asking the business what makes them important. What kind of impact do they have to revenue? If we don't have a CT machine and we've got 6 of them, but one of them goes down, how critical is that? Is it critical to the operations of the hospital? Personal identifiable information, is that involved? Because now we start talking about privacy and regulations. Then who makes that decision? And usually that's going to be, you're going to have your business impact analysis. You're going to involve your legal, your C-suite, InfoSec, the business themselves, have an analysis for determining what's important. And usually finance, HR, business versus the customer, all those kind of get worked in. And usually there are, I believe there are templates out there that allow you to be able to go through and methodically work through coming up with that analysis to make that determination that this is the most important thing and this is what we have to protect. So when we're protecting our data, we think back to years ago when we were on, We had everything on site. You still might, depending on your organization or where you work. But basically, you had your physical boundary walls, whether it was the building, the front door, the gates, the electrified gates, whatever. You get inside the building. Now you're looking at your network, how everything communicates. You have your endpoints, your servers, your desktops. Then you have the identification of your users for accessing all the different resources. And then you have the most important thing, the critical data. So usually, you're stemming out from that. There is not as much security, or that's the different points that you have to think about regarding the security for your environment. Now, that's where we started. Where we are now is we're not so much on-prem. We can't put our arms around all of our servers because we now have gone into the cloud. And in the cloud, especially from a supply chain management, either because we've got a software as a service or platform as a service, that is a supply chain third-party organization that we're working with. If you've got cloud infrastructure with Azure or AWS, that's your supply chain. And a lot of them, organizations are, I apologize, I don't have the source on here. I will get that. But essentially 53% of them confirm the cloud shift is making it difficult to detect insider threats as well as monitoring it and everything else. 22 have insight visibility, cloud operations, only 22%. 65% I've seen an increase in insider threats over the last year, and 33% are monitoring abnormal behavior. So they're seeing weird things going on with different accounts, whether that's because of searches or scans or other things that are going on. We can't talk about third-party risk, of course, without really touching upon cloud security. And one of the things, a lot of the issues that we're seeing, this came from SANS Cloud Security Survey a couple of years ago. And it still kind of holds true because one of the big issues they deal with is unauthorized access, intentional or unintentional, inability to respond to incidents. You have something happen within your cloud server and being able to respond to that, whether you've got proper incident response plans or not, but then also unauthorized access from other either employees or third parties that are gaining access into there. So those are some of the concerns that they're seeing with that. Another part of it that comes to this is lack of skills, poor configuration of security, poor configuration of APIs. And here's ways that machines are gaining access in. We've seen several stories, I know I have over the last 6 months, where organizations have had their data scraped through APIs because they haven't been configured correctly. They're allowing the end users or whatever to be able to scrape everything over a period of time and not really monitoring it or checking for that. When it came with what was involved with the successful attacks within cloud, account hijacking, password reuse, misconfiguration of the firewall. So many times we see with the elastic searches going on, security reachers are able to come across these databases and discover these leaks, and then privileged user abuse. But one of the things that you get within the cloud from Azure, Google, and Microsoft is they do have security reports. And I remember years ago, people used to go, hey, we got a firewall, we're secure now. And then they get hacked and they would wonder why. And we'd go in and realize that they bought it, plugged it up, and got connected to the internet and didn't really configure it, didn't really restrict things. They didn't configure it properly. They go to the cloud and the same thing happens again. Hey, we put everything in the cloud, we should be good. But they're getting breached because of they're not going through and getting it configured correctly. So essentially, cloud security, a lot of it comes down to managing your people, making sure there's the training in there, whether there's, hey, the ISC squared CCSPs, you have those on board, or folks are getting that certification, that qualification, or you're not able to get your people trained and not able to provide that. That kind of becomes a big issue as well. Credential hygiene's become essential, whether it's password reuse or there's no MFA. Now, don't get me wrong, MFA is great, but it's not a silver bullet. It's just another level of authentication that you can have. And certainly want to be able to raise awareness within the organization as well as with your developers and people that are working within the cloud. So continuing on with the strategies, we've always thought people, processes, and technology. Now you kind of have to add in partners and suppliers with that as well, because they are going to have an impact to your organization. One of the things when it comes to understanding your organization, one of the things that I highly recommend doing, if you haven't done so before, is read a data-driven defense computer strategy. Do I have it? Yep. There's my copy. Roger Grimes wrote it. to be transparent, to be honest, he's a colleague of mine at KnowBe4, but he personally published this book himself. He sold about 33,000 copies of it. But when I talk to other CISOs and I ask them, hey, what's the most important book for somebody to read if they're going to be a CISO? Several times I've had them tell me this. One of the things that Roger does within the book is he makes you analyze creating your defenses based on your number one impacted exploit. And of course, the number one thing that's out there is social engineering. And so once you figure out what that defense or what that exploit is, and you figure out your defenses, you want to make sure you've got your what we call our 3x3, your prevent, detect, and recover programs, your policies, technical solutions that you have, and then the education that goes along with it. You want to combine all those to make sure that you're effectively protecting against that particular exploit or type of attack that's coming in your organization. Then you focus on the second and the third, rather than going into all the technical debt from all the different systems, but you're still getting breached because emails are getting through and people are clicking on links. Layered defense, nothing's 100%. You got to have the risk mitigation program, security awareness. You can do various technologies, get rid of the RDP to the internet. So one of the things I do with my students every semester is we talk about reconnaissance as part of the cyber kill chain. And I take them out to shodan.io, and we do a port search for 3389, which we know is RDP. And I actually did it the other night because we did ransomware. We talked about ransomware the other night. And the number of results that I got back in Shodan for 3389 was about 4.6 million systems where RDP is openly connected to the internet. When you break it down, look at the US, it's about 1.5 million systems that were connected. And so, we're still seeing a lot of that. And of course, with the vulnerabilities exposed to that, that just makes it easier for cyber criminals to get in through your front door that way. Endpoint protection, and then of course, backups. When we start looking at security awareness, so we look at, the big issue is, your human factor, your security awareness. One of the things we've recognized over the 10 years that KnowBe4 has been around are these 10 phases for organization security awareness. I could spend a whole hour just talking about this. And so I think I will. No, I'm kidding. Basically, what you want to do is, and I'll get a copy of the presentation to you, and you can visit the KnowBe4 website and see all the different 10 phases. But basically, it's going from where you're just training your IT folks all the way to getting your employees trained, getting them engaged, giving them communication abilities to report back incidents, to eventually making them the human endpoint where there's a strong security culture and everything else, and they've adopted the right behaviors. So when we look at focusing on changing behavior, it's not just a single lesson. You want to be able to have that training and that awareness so that you can adjust the one or two behaviors that we're going to work on, and then next time work on the other ones. But security awareness and secure behavior aren't the same. Traditional programs fail because there's an knowledge and intent gap. Because I know something, just because I'm aware doesn't mean I care. Yeah, I took the training. Yeah, I know I'm not supposed to click on phishing links. Yeah, I know the speed limit says 70 miles an hour, but I'm doing 80. Just because I'm aware doesn't mean I care. If you try to work against human nature, you end up failing. And this is in the sense of a lot of the shadow IT departments that are out there. We're seeing a lot of the times is, where the department of no, it's a matter of trying to work with them. They want to get into the cloud. They want to have a server or an application, depending on the sensitivity or what kind of data that's going out there. When you try to work against, everyone's going to try and figure a way around it so they don't have to take that particular or take a particular action. The key thing here is what your employees do is more important than what they know. And of course, that actions is what's key. And so when we look at security culture, we define it as the ideas, customs, and social behaviors that impact the security of your organization. And so this is kind of that next step after security awareness. And your strong security culture, basically where we've done studies in organizations that have a strong security culture are 50 times more, organizations that don't have a strong security culture are 50 times less where they may share credentials. there's that opportunity where they could share it out because they just don't have the strong enough culture and that awareness. But it's important to be honest with your goals with regards to your organizational culture. We've seen phishing tests that have gone on where people are getting bonuses, and they had only just recently laid off people. The employees got upset. And so it's important to make sure that when it comes to those phishing simulations, you're following it in line with the culture and, of course, upper management. When it comes to dealing with our users, some of our users may be singers. So does anybody know what kind of computers that singers, musical theater, opera singers, what they like to buy? Adele.
Wow.
Okay. So touched on the attack vectors, touched upon the human element with all this and the different strategies that we want to implement to protect that human element. So now let's start looking at that suppliers and vendors with regards to working with them within our organization. Some of the challenges. So I've been on the vendor end. I've been the one that's had the questionnaire sent to me and reviewed contracts and been grilled on certain topics. And we need to do this and you should do this. And if you don't know how to do it, go talk to Acme X company. But there are challenges for the vendor. And again, this kind of goes to that awareness, but understanding, especially if they're a global company, they may have certain embargo, they may have certain processes they have to comply with. Everyone's always wanting secure configurations. They want them hardened, got to have them updated. Is the remote access available? And that usually comes down to, the customer that's buying the product, they're putting that in the contract. It's got to be patched every other month and everything else. And it's like, well, it's important to understand what that process is. And I'm coming out of the SCADA environment, the industrial control systems. When you're dealing with things that are on the perimeter, yes, they have to be updated all the time. When you're dealing with products that are reliable on availability, like systems in hospitals, manufacturing, those kind of things, it's a little different. And so those expectations have to be set up. Usually, there's some compliance has got to be followed as well, either by the vendor or your supplier. But eventually, where does the responsibility fall in for certain aspects? And a lot of that comes in the contract discussions, compromises, and those kind of things. Questionnaires are always a fun topic. There's a lot of pros and cons to each one. Whether, okay, you're going to you're going to fill out the questionnaire. It's, 250 questions and yeah, we need it back tomorrow. Setting expectations is important. Then verifying the evidence, so you say you've got a patch program that you're going through, making sure all the systems are patched within 24 hours of the patch coming out. Do you have evidence of that? And is that something of a self audit, or do you bring in a third party company to do all that? There are a lot of different questionnaires out there that you can use. You've got the NIST, you've got the standard information gathering. There's a Cloud Security Alliance one as well that's out there. So it's just a matter of looking at that. But then you start getting into your risk management with your supplier and the security for that. And there's 3 different ways you can go about doing it. One, you can use a vendor risk management program, or you hire a third party company to do that evaluation for you, or there's a service that they have, managed support service, or it's a combination of both. You have a managed support service to get scores of all the different vendors you're working with, and then you do your own risk assessments through questionnaires or whatever it may be. But you're looking at the threats and vulnerabilities that you're going to get from them with that particular product coming into your environment. And then, of course, when we start talking about risk, there's all the likelihood that goes along with it. So then you've got to be able to go through and collect and assess and remediate all this information. When it comes to the questionnaire, set an expectation. You're giving them a month, 3 weeks, 6 weeks. But at the end of the 6 weeks, they better show up with, have that expectation of what they need to bring in. You want to have policies for incidents as well, those emergency events, something catastrophic, hurricanes, because here in Florida, that's what we deal with, earthquakes. It could be data centers going down. That's all part of that business continuity disaster recovery program. Being able to go through and identify the gaps and then assess the risk for those for not being completed. I know one of the times I was working with a future customer, and they wanted us to implement MFA on our logins at the servers at site. That wasn't something we had available as a product at that time. It wasn't something that was highly requested. This particular customer was very security conscious, and they basically then wanted us, they wanted to put their MFA solution on our systems. You know, that wasn't something we were ready to do. So then they had to go through and assess that risk. And then, of course, looking at the corrective action that's going to be done to remediate any of the issues that you have. And then, of course, working with your vendor or working with your customer, dealing with those remediation plans that you have for whatever it is that they're not happy with or something that's not coming through. When you start looking at defense in depth, this is from your from you as if you were the owner, you've got a third party coming in, they want to have remote access in the environment. We start looking at defense in depth and start making sure that when we've identified what that critical data is, or that crown jewel, or whatever we're going to call it, we're able to isolate that and restrict the access and control the access, whether it is with MFA, reducing group accounts, and so forth. Then you have your remote access solutions, and you need to make sure you have those kill switches. You know, you want to be able to control who's coming into your environment, document when they're getting in, and if any type of MFA can be done in there, whether it's machine to machine, but interactive, you definitely want to be really tracking and being aware of that. And you want to be able to verify that whoever is coming in is that person. And then, of course, yearly, you certainly want to be going through and review it, audit it, and repeat it. Pretty well, when you start identifying all the different risks with your different vendors, you want to have a register. You want to have some document that tracks all the different attack vectors, the threat actors or cyber criminals that can impact that. Having that data-driven analysis, looking at the root cause of what the different attacks would be, and then maybe even working either with the vendor or your developers and having threat modeling exercises, tabletop exercises. You track all that, you store it in your risk register. So real quick, GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. There's a lot of GRC tools that are out there. And basically, this is like your central management tool for being able to monitor all the your processes and programs towards protecting the company. Your risk management, it's basically going through and assessing what the different risks are and how you mitigate them. And then compliance, you may have a requirement to comply with a particular organization, PCI, SOX, NERC, HIPAA, whatever it may be. Well, there's a lot of different types of compliance. You can have no processes, nothing formal, someone sitting there with a spreadsheet going through that, or you're relying on Excel and Outlook, you're keeping track of all the emails, you've got a spreadsheet that goes through and does that. Or you get a ticketing system and a document management so that you can properly track and store all the documentation, all the policies and procedures. And so you want to have essentially a centralized vendor risk management console, and there's a variety of different applications out there. You've got Archer, you've got the KnowBefore's got a KCM, but basically a way to be able to streamline all your information, look at who's responsible for what, and meet those vendor requirements. Shameless marketing slide, but KnowBefore Compliance Manager is something we have. It's easy to use. knowbefore.com/KCM. So done with that. So an Englishman, a Frenchman, a Spaniard, and a German all walk into a club and get seated at the back. And the person on stage goes, "Hey, can you see us?" And they respond, "Yes, we see ya." But okay, fine. All right, so some final thoughts. Now, I know I threw a lot at you with a lot of information, went through a lot over the last presentation. That's okay. I'm going to get you a copy of the deck. You'll have my contact information, so you'll be able to reach out to me. So identify your assets and the critical ones. Collaborate and identify risk with your third parties. Determine what access is needed for those third parties. Understand and monitor all connections, like whether it's machine, API, interactive, associated with your risk. Incident response plans for your third parties. Determine who's responsible for what. There's no silver bullet, really, but it requires a machine gun, in my opinion. You need a whole lot of different processes. You need the technology, and you need the people in education. With regards to the machine gun, vendor management, compliance, risk register are great tools to have. Educate and assess your employees on the cybersecurity. Do it frequently, so that way you can engage them a lot more with regards to understanding cybersecurity the program overall. I mentioned a couple times throughout the presentation regarding, the human being the weakest link. This is a chart. This came from Identity Theft Resource Center. They basically kind of calculated what the spending has been on cybersecurity, I think since 2007, and the number of breaches. Number of breaches is still going up, and so is the spending. Now, I'm curious whether or not this is spending that's been done after a breach or before a breach or a combination. But essentially, humans are the weakest link. And that's this is this year's Verizon Data Breach Report, showing that social engineering is up there, your web application attacks kind of second place. But when we look at the spending, you got about 50% that gets spent on networking, 22% on your endpoint, your laptop servers, 3% gets spent on the human. So we're spending billions of dollars on cybersecurity, but only 3% goes for employees, yet the number one attack is social engineering. So,
James, I
yeah.
hate to, I don't want to interrupt you, but at the same time, I'm curious, have you seen a shift in those numbers for the COVID/remote workers? Have those statistics changed as far as responses, as people who are taking the training, understanding the training, et cetera, the training programs? Has COVID impacted that at all?
One of the things we have noticed with COVID is the number of phishing attacks have gone up. I mean, exponentially. Same with the ransomware attacks. So if people are, and we've been, I know before, whether you're Proofpoint or Cofense or whoever else, we're actively selling and having security programs out there to get the people educated, because organizations are realizing, holy crap, we got to get our people trained and educated. But because we're seeing so many phishing attacks escalating all through 2020 and into this year as well. So I don't have an update on this slide. This slide's about a year old, but I haven't seen a shift. But basically the point with this particular slide is to show we're spending all the money on all the other stuff, but we know to recognize the problem is the human aspect. Are we spending enough on the humans? And not only just security awareness and training, but also educating our developers and security operations folks, because they're the ones creating the applications, and then we're still finding 0 days, or we're still finding databases sitting out on cloud servers, those kind of things. So to wrap up, essentially, your organization's cybersecurity is only as strong as your weakest supplier's security program. Other shameless plug, on Amazon Prime, if you do have it, you can watch the first season of Inside Man. Now, one of the things when it comes to security awareness that we promote is the fact that you don't want to just have a security awareness program where you do the training, you go next, finish, take the test, and you're done, and you don't care about it for another year. The Inside Man is all about a story first. It's about a guy who infiltrates a company to try and steal data. There's 10 episodes, each one's about 8 minutes long. And at the end of each episode, there's points that are to remind you of what not to do or what cybersecurity mishap happened during those 8 minutes. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. Like in the opening, the gentleman in the front, the character's name is Mark. He's sitting in the building and he sees somebody leaving with the visitor badge, and they're about to walk out, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, you've got to turn your badge into security, but I'll turn it in for you," because she's on her phone and heading out. So now he's got a visitor badge, and now he gets inside, and then he's got himself a couple cups of coffee. He's got the phone on his neck, and he's kind of standing by the door, and he sees some people open it up, and then they hold the door open for him, and he walks in. And then there's another item. Well, I decided to show this to my wife. She hears me talk about cybersecurity all the time. We got about 5 minutes in, and I had to turn it off. She's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe they let him into that. That is so not what you're supposed to do." So I realized at that point, I'm like, okay, she knows it. I don't need to share any more with her. But it's a great story. Season 1's available. We're actually writing season 4 right now, but we've got season 1 on Prime Video. Really cool series. It's all about story first, security second. So it's kind of neat. Last thing I want to just leave you with is, does anybody know what an air conditioner and a computer have in common besides having both fans? They're both useless when you open Windows. So I want to thank you all for your attention. Hopefully it's been informative, and you were able to take away something from it. Hopefully I lived up to all the hype and expectations. that Tatra gave me, but I do appreciate the opportunity to present this to you and share this information for you. I'm on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's my email address there if you want to email me. I've got the link for LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm on Clubhouse too. I do a Saturday morning. Well, it'd be really early for you all because I do it at 7 a.m. East Coast time on Wednesday mornings. It's called The Best. It's Bleeding Edge Security Talk that I do with a colleague of mine. So we have a lot of fun doing that. So other than that, any comments, any questions, any concerns, anything you'd like to know a little more about?
Thank you, Mr. James. It has been really a good talk after a long time, because last couple of years, I didn't have time to even spend on security, mostly buried into the work. So this is a refresher now for me.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot of good information, James. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'd like to thank you, James. I love the jokes, even if they're corny. Being a trainer myself, I totally appreciate that. So your presentation was absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure our members got a lot of great info out of your presentation.
Well, hopefully they'll be able to catch it on the recording too, and they're seeing it and they finish watching it. So.
Yes, and
That's the idea.
we
Yeah.
are recording it. It will be available. So that this will be recorded along with the presentation slides from earlier, so people can click on the links for social media and our other events. But again, thank you so much, Chris. We were just so excited. We had somebody on a national level being able to come and talk to us about such an exciting topic, and it was absolutely fantastic. Now, I don't know if you want to tout your buds at Host Unknown on YouTube for the CISSP videos that are just totally hilarious.
So I think I mentioned to Tatra last time, but just to kind of rub shoulders with celebrities. Javad's a normal guy. Javad Malik, who he was, let's see, well, yeah, he's the dark skinned guy in the video, but he's a very good friend. I've known him as long as I've known Spencer Wilcox, who I know is there in central New Mexico. I was actually, when I saw his comment on LinkedIn, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll show up to the presentation. That'd be fun. But he didn't, so I'll have to give him a hard time. But I've known Javad for years, and he's a guy that loves to make videos and talk about cybersecurity. With the Host Unknown guys, he's been friends with them for 20 years. They get together every couple of years and make a fun video and just a kind of a fun way. They have their own podcast, by the way. They Host Unknown podcast. They come out every Friday, I think. So yeah, they always they have a good time with that. So
Hey, James, I got a question.
yes, sir.
Can you do like a quick 2 minutes? Because I'm pretty sure you're closer to the equation. I have been so buried in work, I'm not up to speed. So can you do your a quick 2 minutes on the Biden EO?
On the Biden, the executive order?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So essentially, you're talking about the one that came out a couple of months ago?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So what they're looking at there with the supply chain and securing all the government facilities and systems, one of the things they're looking at is zero trust, which I think is fascinating. And a lot of that's going to apply to any of the DoD, anybody working with any U.S. organization, DoD, and Department of Education even. But one of the key things that I took away from it is they're looking at supply chain. They're looking at going through and assessing all the systems, figuring out because that's always been the biggest problem is trying to have a proper asset management system. But they're looking at wanting to implement zero trust as the way for handling all the identity and access management, the systems management. At least that's what I took away from it. I'm kind of waiting because it was an EO. I know that NIST is working on it. I think I saw something they came out with the other day, but I haven't had a chance to go back and look at it. But yeah, that would be kind of my quick 2 minutes on it.
Quick 2 minutes. Okay. All right. Cool beans. Thank you.
If I find anything more, I'll put it on my LinkedIn page.
Yeah, yeah. I'm close to CMMC. I saw that EO.
Right.
I'm trying to read the cards and the crystal balls, but you know, it's kind of a little murky right now. So
Yeah. And now I know the feeling. Cool. Very good.
all right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
I would like to thanks James again. We will have this presentation recorded and it will be available online on our Discord channel along with the other presentation links. So you can follow us on social media, which we really would encourage you all to join, whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, and I know security people are can be kind of a little hesitant to be on social media, but to help the chapter and spread the word on great presentations like this, it would be super helpful to be able to retweet or post on LinkedIn or Discord or anything to promote fantastic presentations like this and get more people to attend. So we encourage that. And like I said, the presentation will be posted so you can get to the links. And by all means, a super absolute thank you to James to taking the time, even though he's in Florida and 2 hours ahead of us, which means it's late for him. But thank you for taking the time to
Another 20 minutes I
us.
turn into a pumpkin.
I know, but I'm sure you know the crystals and all the the pretty pumpkin, right?
Bejeweled or bedazzled pumpkin.
The bedazzled Disney pumpkin, yes. But I do want to thank an extra thanks to James because he is 2 hours ahead of us. So it is taking time into his personal time, but he has offered to do this for us tonight, and we are extremely grateful for him to do this. And thank you for all the information you gave us, the links you gave us. And if we have any continued questions, we will be sure to get them to James.
My way. Yep.
Yeah, or send them James' way, or if anything, you can send them to us and we can pass them on to James to spread this fantastic information. And thank you again to James for this fantastic presentation. Thank you. It was very amusing, even with the the jokes. I love it.
I got plenty more too, which is the other funny part of all that.
I mean, we've all been on those corporate calls that were rolling our eyes and like, oh, when is this going to end? But yours was not like that. And there was plenty of informational and entertaining parts to it. And we thank you so much.
It's what I call edutainment.
For that, Jim. Thank you very much. This is Kurt Kaliti. We've met in Florida a couple of times.
Oh, cool. Good. Thanks.
Oh, yes, you get to meet Kurt. Yes, Kurt, we were talking about you earlier. About speaking at the Congresses about IPv4 to 6.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to try to step up to that because it's a wonderful experience.
Yep. Yeah, no,
I'm trying, Kurt. I'm trying.
Well, hey, don't feel too bad because I put in for Congress this year and they didn't even pick mine. So, I was like, really? You didn't? I'm here in Orlando and you did. I'm like, all right, whatever. But one of the things I did for ISC Squared is I chair the Global Achievement Awards for the Americas. And so they gave me a free pass. So it's like, all right. So I did some work for them and they gave me a free. So I get to at least get to go to Congress this year. So if anybody's showing up to it, let me know and it'd be great to meet up in person. Actually, if you do end up coming to Orlando, come in early on Sunday because Sunday night, I am having the Central Florida chapter meeting the Sunday night before Congress kicks off. And we're doing it at a mystery dinner theater. So. Oh,
wow, that sounds fantastic. I would love to go, but I got to check with our budget people first.
Check my calendar. Yep. Check my schedule. Yep. Oh, no,
I
that's
would
going to
love
happen.
to go. That sounds fascinating. I love those mystery parties. Those are so cool.
Yeah. So cool.
All right. Well, thank you. I mean, I realize we're closing in on 8. So and then obviously James's time, it's almost 10. So I don't want to keep him too much longer. Just want to say thank you again. This has been a fantastic presentation. Can't thank you enough. Thank you for volunteering to do this. And and we look forward to keeping in touch with you and keeping you in our circle and having you join us as we grow and trying to make New Mexico CNMC something fantastic.
Definitely. Got a good team.
Oh, thank you.
Bye, guys. Take care.
See you, Stella.
All right, thank you, Stella. We're glad you could join us.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.